make sure that everybody is in place before I start. Okay, let's go. So today's topic is the revenue hidden in your OT and IT data and how to make use of OT and IT data. Just a reflection before we start, this is not only about OT and IT data, it's also about how to build sustainable business models within commercial real estate, actually, and especially how to use that potential in OT and IT data. So this is the fifth of our webinar series out of totally six. Right. Very good. So this is today's agenda. We're going to make a short introduction. The market is speaking. Are we listening? A lot of things is going on. We have some really sharp numbers from the market that we are going to present. And after that, we're going into the why. What is the shift about and why does it matter right now? After that, we're going to focus on strategy. I mean, we're going to focus on the experience economy here and the connected building. What kind of strategy could you actually use to make sure that you use the potential of OT and IT data? And then we're going to continue with the how. To give you a couple of really good examples. And with me here today, I have a panel with two people really knowledgeable within commercial real estate. They work a lot with both integration platform, the Proptech OS, of course, and then from FlowPass. I have the CEO from FlowPass with me here today that has a couple of really good examples from the market. And then we're going to summarize and then do the Q&A, hopefully at around 9:50. So 50 minutes to this session in total. Very good. My name is Max Sandberg. I'm the moderator here today for this webinar. And my background is I've been a management consultant for 15 years. I've been the CIO of Gothenburg City, and then I was the CEO of a couple of companies in Gothenburg within the same realm, you could say, as Proptech OS, also within tenant experience. And with me here today, I have Henrik Eriksson and Johan Bjuregård, both experts within commercial real estate, and especially regarding business modeling and what's going on the market now. So Henrik, please make a short introduction.
Hi, I'm Henrik Eriksson. Been a landlord my whole life, except for the 3 last years, mainly focusing on revenue. And 2016, I met the founders, Eric and Per of Proptech OS, and I started to realize the importance in data when you want to create both more revenues and new revenues in our business.
Great, thank you very much. And then Johan Bjuregård, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone, Johan Bjuregård, co-founder and CEO of FlowPass. I'm a tech entrepreneur. Started out back in 1998 and have since then been building companies from scratch in the interaction where double platforms, B2B and B2C. So always a combination of providing tech into business to business, but also with a focus on consumer. Been working with private services, digitalizing that in a concept that was called James at the Service, sold to Sodexo, which today is a concept called Circles. Worked a lot with the office landlords, providing services to buildings during those days. And now with FlowPass, we're helping office landlords to distribute and scale and sell flex spaces as part of a complementary offer to the main office lease.
Okay, thank you very much. Very good. So just to make a short introduction here, I mean, what we're seeing in the market is that the current business model is definitely being challenged at its core, and this requires new ways of thinking. I mean, how are we going to handle the new kinds of demands, the new kind of way of leasing, you could say, and especially the new kinds of demands from the tenants, because they require more flexibility, new kinds of services, and especially, and you are going to talk a lot about this, Henrik, buildings that really earn their place in the world. And the question is, I mean, what does it take strategically, technically, operationally to adapt to these new prerequisites in our market? And based on that, why are we underutilizing OT and IT data? We have this enormous amount of data that could actually provide, the tenants with new kinds of insights and maybe offer, the business in a totally new kind of way, spaces, flexible solutions, etc., etc. So that's the background, and let's just dive into the agenda. So why? What is the shift, and why does it matter right now? Thing is, we had this workshop the 28th of April. It was extremely interesting. It was totally about AI, how to use AI within real estate. We had gathered some of the largest landlords in Gothenburg and that region. And we worked in two different groups, generative AI and agentic AI. And it was, a bit surprising, actually, that there was so much focus on how to reduce vacancy and underutilized space. So the thing was that during this workshop, both the generative AI group that worked with the taking out solutions worked with vacancy, and then we had the other group that worked with underutilized space. And this actually says something about where the market is right now. And if you take a look at a couple of numbers here, we see that the vacancy rate is at historic highs, above 17 in Helsinki, somewhere around 16% in Stockholm, and Gothenburg central parts, somewhere around 13%, really astonishing numbers. And we also see that the transaction volume is at record low levels. They collapsed between 2023 and 2022, lowest in a decade. So that's what we see. And above all, we have some numbers also explaining this. I mean, if we talk about real estate returns, we see that the numbers for 2021 was really, really good. Then everything plummeted, and we see that the market is still trying to recover from this. And that's, of course, really interesting. So, Henrik, I'm just really curious here. I mean, what actually shifted in the market, and why do we stand where we stand today?
Well, I think everyone is kind of knowledgeable about this earn the commute. I mean, the default situation before COVID was that you had to go to the office, and there was not really any urge, in order to earn the commute. I mean, you have a time to work, to get to work, and a hassle. But now people are questioning this, and this shift is permanent because our mobility is a lot better. We work on a global scale, etc. And landlords have been, they've been used to, 5-year leases, 7-year leases. You say hi when they move in, and you try to get them to stay after 6 years. There was not really any work to be done, and the work was just somewhere where you went. And this shift is here to stay. And together with, the AI coming, the workforce, there's not really that much use of an office. So we really need to create an experience in the office.
Mm-hmm.
And that shift is here to stay, basically. And that's why I think we focus a lot on the cost cutting, but I think we need to look at offensive strategies as well, actually, how to get more revenues or even get new revenues. I think that's pretty important as well. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. That matter. And most of all, we will talk about all this data that we actually can do to enhance both experience, which will make people to use the office more.
Interesting. Johan, you are actually experiencing this at first hand. Why is this important now, you think?
Well, I think we work with a lot of large landlords, but we also have dialogues and meeting a lot of landlords. And I think that the flight to quality definition, which means that office demands falls, and the demand that is left is they're moving into the best spaces. I think that's one of the reasons. So companies are cutting space, but they don't drop the office, but they drop what they think is a bad office and make them smaller. So they keep less space, but want it to be really good, more than central serviced, and they will actually pay more for per square meters for that. So I think that is what we are seeing, and a lot of landlords are confirming that. So if you have good in good central, you might be not as affected. But if you have in other areas, some are struggling really hard for it, and then it makes like Henrik will talk about more today, but the experience, what can we do to make it worth going to these locations?
I mean, what are we talking here? I mean, is this about service bundling, that you're putting together a different kind of offering to the tenants to make it more interesting, as Henrik said, to earn the commute, right? I mean, what is that about? How does the service packaging look?
I mean, it's well, I should talk about that during the cases in a more in-depth view. I'm bringing up three different perspectives, cases on that, but it's from what we hear and what we are doing, and where we see the effect is that you still have the main office, the traditional office lease, but we're seeing that more and more landlords are moving into owning flex spaces, and that's a central complementary part of the main office. And it's not competing with the main office, it's actually strengthening the main office if you do it properly. And then, of course, amenities and services, those are combining the central experience for me as an individual walking into a building, and not only maybe participating with colleagues at my company, but also maybe with other tenants and their employees. That's so it becomes more like a destination. I really want to go there. I don't want to miss out on this. And if you can create that, that's a real competitor to working from home, as an example.
I was just, I was mentioning flexibility because I know that's a core pillar of what you're going to tell us more about later on. But flexibility is actually some kind of core principle for this, right? I mean, Henrik,
Yeah.
what do you say in terms of?
Well, I think it's actually the outcome, or because what we will talk about the data set, right? But normally we'll talk about the IT data set, which consists of the IT equipment within a tenancy, but also the OT data set. But we have another data set, and that's a consumer data set from anticipation and how we anticipate people in what the intentions are to go to the office, and how we can actually make a difference in their decisions, and how we can customize and understand their decision making when coming to the office and consume our offices, so we landlords can make more money, but still in a win-win situation. I mean, it's not about getting the money for free. I mean, we should earn the commute, of course, but that's this data set is I think is very crucial when we. And I think we have to realize what economy we're in, and that's, I think, what the foundation, what we're going to talk about today, the data set that you have to have in order to be moving it in the ladder of the experience economy.
Very good, very good. So let's focus on the what then. I mean, the experience economy and the way we look at the connected building, because this is the value add you both are talking about. But the question is, how do we transfer and actually go about to the next level to actually implement this. And the question is, I mean, what if your building data would actually tell you where the hidden revenue is? And that's the lead point here to Henrik. So please tell us more about the strategy the real estate unit can use.
Well, this is my favorite. I can talk to our for hours around this, and you have to stop me if I talk too long about it. But Joe Pine kind of started to create this thought about the progression of economic value back in the 90s. And for me, as a landlord born into the square meterage, the commodity of square meter, you have to go to the office and no value added, was a big, the default situation when I came into the market back in the 90s. But Joe Pine, his thought was that, if you had a coffee bean as a commodity, I think this is a standard example. If anyone has ever read about Joe Pine and experience economy, that coffee bean can actually be roasted into goods and sold. And from that moment, when you have harvested coffee bean to making it to goods, roasted goods, you added value that the consumer is actually willing and able to pay more for it. And I think this is also a big thing we have to realize. What COVID did our process, the landlord process, from a business to business process to a business to consumer process. That's why we're looking at the hospitality industry a lot more. And that makes a big difference because we have with consumers of the workplace to do. But if we keep on going to the coffee bean, you can add even more value if you serve that coffee bean as a cup of coffee, as a service in a coffee shop. And you can add even more to it if you give that coffee as an experience in a great environment with people smiling at you. They know your name. And you actually customize it for the person who you are and what you want. And even remember what you want. Hi, Joanne, do you want this coffee today again? And then you can, of course, transform when you help people to, brew coffee. You have courses, lessons in how you do coffee and so on. So this is the foundation of his economic value, the progression of value in the experience economy. It can of course go up and down. If you look at the airport industry, the flight industry, the airlines did premium and the customer had all his rights and they were focusing on the extra and the premium. But then suddenly Ryanair came in and they said, I don't give a shit about customer as long as I provide low price, high security and accuracy in time, so that was a cost-driven efficiency. And what we'll see in the progression of economic value, when you go down the ladder, you focus on efficiency, cutting cost. But when you go up the value, look at customization, trying to know your customer. And I think that's the importance for our industry now. Getting close, getting reason to meet, reason to talk, reason to understand your tenant. So if we move on to the next one, which is basically showing our industry, I think is very interesting how we started with the square meters and moved up onto the property where we actually add location and price and so on, and then move up to the services where we add personal services like Johan's going to talk about. Shirt washing, or you get your perfect conference room, or by data set who is going to be in the office, which is adapt to you, and so on. So the more you see on the left, on the Y staple, you see the more meaning we get up, the more price we can actually get from the client, but the more we can compete. I think this is the foundation for the shift, and I think this is why we're trying to explore how we can create great experiences, and we will go into a few examples on how we do this through customization. And the layer of this is the more data set we have, the more we can customize and make worth the journey going from home to work. It's either if you customize the ergonomic side or customize who people is going to be aware. So this is the foundation why our business is changing a bit. And this is also the foundation why data, if you move up the ladder, you need to have data on the consumer. If you move down the ladder, you need to have data on things that cut cost, of course. But now we move up and try to create more meaning for the organization and for the employee. So this is the foundation basically of it.
So what do you say now, Henrik? Could we move over to the connection to the IT and OT data just briefly?
Yes, please. So this is so interesting because I left being a landlord 3 years ago, and my work was to work with activity workplaces, and I had 4 conversations every day with different tenants. Nobody ever asked for data. Now it's so interesting because, as you see in the picture, I divide data sets in the workplace in OT data. The data set, the sensors that are in a building, who can show presence, quality, as in humidity, as in temperature, people flow, etc. And the IT data, which then can be AV equipment, it can be Cisco Meraki, who shows also data where people are. But it can also, which Johan and I are going to talk, this OT and IT, but then we have the intentional data. The data that can give us the same dynamics as in the flight industry, where we can put dynamic pricing because we understand that people are more in the office on Mondays and on Fridays. What if we can change that by giving them stimuli on data points why they should go to the office instead, or not use a room and sit in the open space, etc. So this I had just the last 2 weeks, I've been having 4 tenants asking landlords, can we please have your OT data? Because we don't want to buy hardware to see where people are. Maybe we can use your inherent CO2 sensors to give us data how we use our premises. And on the other side, landlords say, that's interesting. Can we have your IT data? Because then we can enhance our BMS system so it gets more sustainable. So when there are less people in the building on the Monday, due to seeing your bookings in your Microsoft Work IQ, seeing how many people actually are coming into the office, then we can steer our BMS so we are more sustainable and can create a better day at work. And that's when we add on Johan on this. Johan and FlowPass, who is actually, to be honest, Johan, what you sell is intentional, aggregational, aggregation of intentions for consumers, which can help the landlord to price, to create great experiences and customize both for the organization and for the individual.
So I'm really eager here to hear Johan reflect on this, because I mean, what you are doing, Johan, is to move up that ladder, right? I mean, the services you provide is actually, I mean, it has that, they have that purpose. So what's your perspective on this? How do you move up the ladder and at the same time use the potential in IT and OT data that Henrik is talking about here?
Yeah. So just to be specific, we're not providing services, but we provide a technical platform.
Of course. Yeah, right.
where you can offer, for once, flexibility in terms of shared spaces. So, and that intentional data, together with, for example, OT data, how the tenant is using their main office, can show us that, okay, they are using a lot of flex data. So in that case, the intentional data can bring it up to speed that maybe their main office is a bit too small. So maybe we should start talking to them proactively about this and learn more. But we can also in the platform, the landlord can provide. They can create events. They can communicate with not only the tenant but also with the tenant employees, and that could be everything from information, news. It can be offerings from service providers in the building, but also in the neighborhood, and that gives us data for how tenant employees, the consumer basically, how they use maybe catering, lunches, attendance. If you provide event like workspaces, or you work with people that have training, cross training, you're doing stuff. All of this data completes a picture of the individual within the tenants, but also the tenants in an overall aggregated information. And so one example could be that it's about collecting the right data and connecting it to the IT and the OT data with the intentional data. So maybe a half empty floor stops being a surprise at the renewal and becomes instead a renewal opportunity long time before the renewal is coming up. That's one example of how you can use that.
Yeah,
But
and
it's about collecting the right data and connecting the dots within those to get the total picture of
yeah,
the.
as you and I've been talking about, Johan, is super interesting. If the consumers will be beneficiary from sharing data, private data, we can actually create great experiences. Because if the consumers within Johan's data set will provide, where they live, their family situation, we can actually estimate the probability of a cohort coming into work, depending on their role, where they live, how many kids they have. And you can imagine the experiences you can create if you in advance know the intentions due to probability. And this is when things start being interesting. And then people say, well, we can't do that to GDPR. Well, we can if we have consent. In the hospitality industry, they perfectly know when I come into a hotel, they know who I am, what room I had, what pillow I had, when I want my breakfast. We can do that perfectly if we agree collectively, that we use the data for good cause and we use it with very careful. And that's when we start creating great experiences. When we go into a coffee shop, we give them our name, So it's all about the narrative. Yeah, sorry, Jan.
No, I also think that the collection of the data today is it's less expensive. It's way less expensive than it used to be. So we can actually bring in this data into the context of exactly what you're saying, Henrik. We actually have one of the landlords we're working with have been starting to think about creating a similar loyalty program that airlines are doing and hotels are doing. So that's spot on, exactly what you're talking about now, Henrik.
Yeah, and if we all agree that we share our data set to bring a common good to organization, we have long going discussions by merging data from Microsoft Work IQ, which has a lot of data regarding bookings, roles, etc., and we add that to a CO2 sensor in a room who actually says, well, this room is booked, but there's no one there. It's so many things we can do, but we need to have the right narrative and be, careful in how we do it, and always agree that we work for the common good and for a great experience that earns the commute. And also, which we'll talk about soon, Max, I think the visualizing of data.
Yeah, definitely.
We had an example already back in 2019, where there were complaints. This company had started to working activity based, but they had no clue about the climate and so on. And the complaints were huge and spent a lot of hours, And suddenly we put up dashboards showing, the office plan with climate, and people were empowered to move to their perfect climate, their perfect sound, and the complaints went down with 43%. Documented. That's shitloads of money.
Okay, let's switch focus here from what, because now we know the principles of the strategy. Now we need to see some firsthand examples, of course, and it was really interesting, Henrik, because I was leading this workshop down in Gothenburg the 28th of April, and we had prepared a lot of material. Amongst others, we had this tool that I developed before in forehand that my colleague Gustav was taking over. And as a consequence of these two focus areas, and this was the one regarding vacancy, we could actually produce during the workshop this dashboard where we actually had real estate owners setting up the different kinds of questions, the challenges, and we made the AI take out to develop this solution. We did it with Lovable, and Gustav actually took this dashboard out, and I really need you to dive into this dashboard. I mean, what
Yeah.
happens when we reason and combine different kinds of data and about the hidden vacancy? Tell us more about that.
I mean, what we see here is a result of the cost of getting data, retrieving real-time data is coming towards zero. That's what we see. This is a result of this. We actually, when you have an operative system, you can retrieve data from all kind of sources. It might be Microsoft WorkIQ, it might be FlowPass, it might be OT systems, IT systems, and this is a huge leap because before you needed a lot of integrational work, you need to change and adapt. So what we see here is a beautiful set of a mix of IT data and OT data. And probably you can't see, but those staples with red show the utilization. You can see slowly the utilization is going down over time. Combined with complaints are going up. And you see the lease expiring within, I think, 18 months or something. And it's a lot of money. That's a very good early warning, because what landlords need to do in this market to prioritize their work, prioritize their time. And prioritization is the road to success. The second staple shows a very interesting how this tenant, so the middle staple, the middle box there shows a tenant who is using more and more external rooms, and now we come back combining data in the building, the tenant's data, but also the data from the conference rooms in the ground floor. So this, what you see here, is actually a tool to give the landlord an oversight, how to prioritize their work. But this one, we have not yet added Johan, because Johan, he has anticipation and intention in his data set. So Johan, you can elaborate on what you're working on with one client and one landlord at the moment, where you actually add intentional and anticipation on the data.
Yeah, I think I started out my career in the .com area. Went from university directly into building websites back in the day, and marketing that was really getting viral at the time was one-to-one marketing. And this was in consumer behavior, where you understand everything about one consumer, what their intentions are and what they're doing. And what I think is astonishing with this is basically that as a landlord, if you use your OT and if you get IT data and intentional data, then you can actually start working with a one-to-one relationship with tenants, but you can also aggregate this over a building. But so we can learn a lot from the tenants and their employees, how they use this space, why they use it, how their main office and their configuration of how many meeting rooms do they have, how many open spaces do they have, and how they use this combined with if you're offering flex spaces and other services to that. And this is, I would say, I haven't worked as a landlord, but I've worked in several other industries and always worked with sales and marketing. And the more you understand your customers, the better you are to build a strong relationship with them, understand their needs, and then you also can prioritize the right solution for them. And
Yeah,
that's how you keep them. That's how you keep your long customers, and they stay with you.
Right.
this is also, a shift from transactional to relay. So you actually get relations instead of
Yeah.
transaction. You have a reason to talk, reason to meet. You know the
Yes.
client.
Yeah.
Sorry, Max. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Well, I was just thinking because it's really important that we give you time, Johan and Henrik, to go through the examples. I just want to tell you, I mean, about the prerequisites. Uh, Very brief presentation here. So, what we normally do, because this is definitely a how question. How do you actually integrate all that different kinds of? Yeah, I mean, OT data. That's like a normal breakfast for us, but combining that with IT data, it's not as simple actually. But what we do at PropTech OS is offering this integration layer. It's a standardized data layer, and it's based on a standard. So what we normally do is compare it with different kinds of languages. So you have different areas, like it's just like languages like German, French, and Swedish, and all of those languages have different dialects. That's why I have such a problem understanding, people from the Nordics sometimes, or maybe I know Stockholmers, they have problems understanding people from Malmö, for instance, and stuff like that, right? So we have different kinds of dialects, and so what we do, principally is adding a translator with the semantic rules, you could say, and what that gives us is English in really simple terms. So what we do, because here you see the different kinds of areas we use: IoT, BMS, BIM, but also IT data there, of course, and we have a full picture of the building based on all the BIM data. You have the BMS data, that's the typical OT data that comes from like what do you call it, like PLCs and stuff like that. And you have different kinds of sensors, and you use the IT data as well. So we standardize, we normalize that data with Real Estate Core, and then we could actually use all that data in PropTech OS for AI. But it could also be for different kinds of apps like FlowPass or whatever. So that's the main principle about what we do, what kind of value we add, and the way forward to make Johan's system even more capable, and adding, for instance, that intentional data that Henrik and Johan is talking about. So where do we end up here? I know, Johan, you have a couple of good examples. But before you go into those examples, I mean, what is really important here? What does the or where does the landlord actually begin this journey to move up the ladder, you could say?
Can I just start? I think that the success, that's when you can go to your tenant and really have the data set and know them. Just like a doctor, you come to a doctor and he's got your whole life of data set, and you can make a choice on what data you want to give him depending on how sick you are. In this case, if you as a landlord, you will become very relevant for the tenant if you know how to utilize the premises, if you know the organization, how they work. I think success is when you, with consent from the tenant, you work together, you put your IT data and your OT data and your intention data on the table, and you say, great, this is what we see. How can we create success together? That's when you have a relational relation, when you build upon relations instead of transactions. Johan, do you have anything more to say about that?
No, I think I think basically it's important, if you go back to Joe Pine and his ladder. Where can you actually start off? What do you have in your basket? How are you equipped? Where do you start? I know that some landlords are way ahead of others, But you can always start somewhere. You can start with a smaller project if you don't have everything, to test that and then build up on that. And always go with, why are we doing this? What KPIs are we looking for? What result do we expect from this? So once you do that, you can always start with something within this, to build a new business model, to provide. If it might also be like the Ryanair concept, that we're just going to stick with the goods.
Yeah,
But if
but
we want to
also,
provide services and move up the ladder, it's about where are we? What do we have? Where
yeah, but
are
I mean, let's start with the basics.
Yeah,
I've been a landlord for 25 years. They got no order of their data. They got no data in real time. And most of all, they had one building consists of 15 to 30 siloed data sets.
yeah.
They don't have it real time. I think that's where we're going to start. We need to start looking at the data. Do you own the data? Do you have the data collectively? Do you have it on the table? All these silos on one platform. That's where you need to start. Because when you have that, the technology is there, so you can use agents, you could use flow paths or anything on it. You have to start getting the data normalized up on real time.
That's a really nice, area to focus on, Henrik, because I know that a lot of real estate owners, they want to, start the journey somehow, but they are thinking, oh, this is really tough. It's hard to do all the, integrations, combining all the data and stuff like that. Just tell us briefly about this. Is it
Oh,
that hard, really?
I think this is the game changer, because a landlord, when I grew up in it, we built the house for 1 year and it stood there for 100 years. We thought you had to have ROIs and everything, you have to plan everything. This is a very new, since Christmas, since the MCP came, integrations, if you do it the right way, the cost of getting data up on a table has gone from hundreds of thousands of crowns, from months of work and continuously integrating stuff,
Yeah.
until just you can basically onboard a building, getting your data set up on a table in 15 minutes, and you can shift from a deductive approach to an inductive approach where you see, oh, we got all this data. Let's see what we can do with it. Instead of a traditional way, oh, we need to know what we need to solve. No, you don't. You can actually get your unknown unknowns by getting all your data up on the table.
Very good, very good. So, Johan, tell us about a couple of examples here before we start wrapping up this webinar.
Yeah, just to be mindful of time, Max. How many minutes do I have for this?
You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. That's good. One each. So we could probably sit and go down on a daily basis with each of these cases. But Flowpass, we have had the fortune to work with Scania over the last 4 years. Scania is an interesting case for a landlord. Scania is obviously an employer with more than 50,000 people around the world, but they are also a property owner. And to condense this into really short, Scania, they had a challenge with commuting to Södertälje for their employees. So before the pandemic, they were actually looking to provide their employees with the possibility of buying day passes and meeting rooms at co-working operators. The answer from the co-working operators was that none of them were offering them day passes and meeting rooms on demand. Basically, whenever they needed on occasion, on a monthly occasion, they wanted them to purchase memberships. Those memberships would only be used like 30% in a month, and it would be very expensive for a couple of thousand people to have memberships. Then the pandemic came, and during the pandemic, an idea grew within Scania to start their own co-working offices in central Stockholm. They named this corporate co-working, and today they have several of these offices. The first one they started is 1,000 square meters. It was a office, a smart and Klart offering from Vasakronan, which was fully furnished, full with services. And they turned this office into a shared office for initially 3,000 people to share. Today, 7,000 people share this office. Scania has built more of these offices in smaller variant in Stockholm. And the effect that they have is that they keep talent, they attract talent, but they're also having 90%, almost 100% occupancy on these square meters, which is not a rock science because there's a lot of people that have access to this. But they also have different rules of setup. So you can purchase a day pass, have 3-1 active over 60 days. You can book meeting rooms the same way. And this is to democratize the access to these spaces. The result for Scania in this case is that they managed to get a lot more networking effect. So people that went to these really attractive offices, they get to know 3 other people on average. So the Scania people that are active in these offices, they build their own network. They network within the divisions, the teams, so they get a lot of more attractiveness through that. But it also helps Scania to develop and interact between previously teams that were isolated and not collaborating together. And this creates fantastic attractive destinations to go. They are filled with good working spaces, but also with the network opportunity, but also filled with a lot of services.
But Johan, we have to add from the landlord perspective, that we charge, that we were in this journey together. We got the 5 times the multiple rent of in Södertälje, but no one raises the eyebrow because the utilization is shared of 7,000 people, 140 desks. So
Yeah.
it's no cost at all. So the conventional KPI, cost per square meter, is not relevant. So we're taking that out of the equation, and we're instead in the experience economy. I think this is the perfect example when you use a data set and you really work within the experience economy and change the model, and look at different KPIs. And that's what we need to do in the future. We need to look for new KPIs in order to succeed.
Yeah. And if we go and look very shortly on Vectura Fastigheter, they're not building properties. They are shaping ecosystems within life science and tech and knowledge intensive industries. So they are offering the traditional office lease, but also a lot of shared meeting spaces, a lot of shared event spaces. They also actually have co-working that they run by their own within these buildings, so they can have a mix of large life tech companies together with startups, which makes it a fantastic ecosystem for them to work in. So tenants and tenant employees that belongs to a building from Vectura, they can participate in this ecosystem, and that brings a lot of attractiveness going there. They also work very close with the service providers within the building. They create events, similar TED Talks. They have common activities. So it becomes a destination. You want to go there. You want to take the commute to go there because you don't want to miss out. And they are doing this in several cities as well. So they can cross promote this offering to their tenants. And that's a totally way. And the data that they get from this is invaluable.
And I think this, Johan, can be enhanced by this research from Stockholm School of Economics regarding weak ties, which this Wallenberg group is working a lot. All these 42 siloed companies actually share spaces, and you can actually look at a data set and see how the weak ties that are produced actually create value. I think that's super interesting as well.
A question in between. Are you guys using the OT data the way you want to, or are there still gaps, Johan? What do you think?
I think just to mention Vectura is an interesting case because it's actually where Proptech, you have them as a customer as well.
Yeah.
So we're actually in the beginning of merging these data to provide Vectura with exactly like the dashboard we just talked about, that they would have all of these, both OT, ET, and intentional data brought in together in this context. So that's just, I mean, it's not theory anymore. It's actually happening now, and it's becoming practice within that. So that's
Right,
super
Johan,
interesting.
you want to mention something short about Antilope before we continue?
Yes. So Antilope, it's a office landlord in Helsinki. They have taken their product, but they're offering tenants to a new level, I would say. They are working with a fix plus flex offering. So the fix is the traditional lease model that they have, but they have a concept called pool, which is the flex. You get everything from meeting rooms, event spaces, to hot desking, basically everything you can find in a co-working, but they don't sell it as a co-working. They sell it as a complementary service that is linked into the main office. So that service agreement, that defines how the tenant can use the flex. So when they have a tenant coming in and looking for 1,500 square meters, they actually tell them that you don't need 1,500 square meters. You can take 1,000, because you have overflow capacity in the building. But not only in that building, you actually have overflow capacity on 11 other addresses in Helsinki.
And I think,
this is
Johan,
also
it's super important to say that the CEO preaches every day, we do not provide square meters, we do not manage properties, we service work.
Exactly, they service work, and the effect, and it's also combined with a lot of good services and a great atmosphere when you come to these buildings. But the learnings from their point is, I think they are actually, when their tenants is taking a less square meters per their main office, they are able to raise the level of the square meter price, and they make new earnings on the flex, which is good, but it's not the main part of it. But there's a stickiness in that flex, and the tenants are asking for more flex and have the agility to have that. And then the combination of the service providing, and this becomes a great destination once again, worth the commute to go in. And you actually have the mix also, like Vectura and Scania, where you meet not only your own colleagues, you meet other tenants and their employees. Like the similar case in Scania, you meet other teams, other divisions, and you collaborate, you create networks effects.
Yeah, and he, I mean, the CEO says, this overlapping data set between all the tenants and in the building is actually the key to success for them to be able to offer tenants more space or less space, because they have the whole picture. And I mean, holistic pictures is the future.
Yeah.
And a holistic picture you can only get if you aggregate both the IT data, the audit data, intention data, and not needing to call in a consultant to integrate every time. Just get the data on board and use AI, what it's meant to be used for, seeing patterns and giving advice.
Extremely interesting. Just to make some kind of summary, my own reflection is, I mean, what you have been talking about is not only OT and IT data. I mean, that's just 30% of the whole picture, right? I mean, what you've been discussing here is the way to add value to all the different kinds of customer segments. That's what I hear. The value propositions to the tenants, to the customers, are rapidly changing, and that's actually required to make people perceive the building as a place they really want to go to commute to. And what IT and OT data is in this puzzle is an extremely important resource, you could say, to be able to add that value. You have to build the different kinds of insights to reach the goal of actually delivering the whole service package and the value proposition to the customers. That's just my brief reflection. Johan, Henrik, what do you think in terms of that?
Well, my baseline is, as being a landlord my whole life, my baseline is if you are considering moving into the experience economy, in order to, compete, in the top brass, in the top line, start with getting your data up on the table, and in the long term, don't tie yourself up in proprietary systems and a lot of integration consultants. Put it up on an operative system. Keep the data with high quality, reliable, and accessible. That's where you start. I think this is my main takeaway, from this work for a couple of years. That's a takeaway we need to start, and then you can start, because now with the development of AI and everything, that's a prerequisite. You have to start there. Otherwise, you have years and dollars of spending in with consultants and integrations and development and etc.
Yeah, I think my takeaway. I think it is very interesting times being a landlord today, and I think instead of being maybe afraid of the changing landscape, embrace it. And I think that the landlords that will, there will be a lot of winners in this, but the ones that really will win is the ones that best understand how their customers want to work, and you have the courage to rebuild your business around that. And we need to become data driven in that phase.
I think also, I said it 3 times or 2 times this session. The cost of acquiring real-time data, streaming real-time data, is going towards zero. And that's a game changer. That is a game changer. And you have to acknowledge that. And I think you should look into, if you're, as a landlord, don't understand what this means, please give me a call.
Amazing, guys. Thank you so much. We're going to go over to the Q&A, the deep dive session with open questions in the Google Meet next. We are up for questions if there is anything been going on. Not currently. I think we have answered most of the questions today. And just want to announce that we have the June 18th last session, permissions, policies, and guardrails for setting up governance and security for Agentic Proptech. As I told you, the June 18th. I thank you so very much for this webinar, and I'll leave you to it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.